find it particularly challenging to ask for testimonials? Because you know they are really important, especially these days and age. If you do, then today's show is for you. I encourage you to continue watching. Welcome to Open SM, where we talk about topics on social media, technology, and business. This is your host, Sherry Rainey. I have a wonderful guest today, Grace Judson, who is going to teach us a strategy about how to obtain effective testimonials. The testimonials that really have longevity and they really have substance. And the reason I know this is because I sat on in a workshop that Grace conducted, and after that workshop, the way I ask for testimonials is completely transformed because I get a lot more out of it. Now, before I introduce Grace, I want to make an important point that if you activate the Showcase app, you'll be able to view resources that Grace has given us. There is a fantastic document where that's the same document that we used in the workshop that I'm talking about, and also a link to her website where you can get to know her better. If you're watching the recording, you can access it through a link that shows on the bottom, or I guess this side, on the bottom left side of the video. It looks like an ad, but it is not an ad. So if you click on it, you get a whole different experience of this show, which I think you will appreciate because it allows you to access the links that I've talked about. So I'm going to stop talking and introduce our show, Grace. Grace, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm so delighted that we arranged this and finally got it going.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. I have to say this is my first Google Hangout, and I'm excited that it's with you.
That's fantastic. I love Google Hangouts, as you can see.
I know you do.
Okay, so I just loved your workshop so much that I thought,
thank you.
This can't be kept a secret. So let's talk about fundamentals. And we all know what the purpose of testimonials is. What is your perspective?
I think very often, because people are a little uncomfortable about asking, they sort of forget just how strategic a testimonial can actually be. So, you know, they think, okay, I've got this testimonial. Somebody has said, oh, Sherry is fantastic to work with. She did great work for me. But that doesn't really mean a whole lot. Mm-hmm. When the reader sees that, it's like, okay, you know, somebody is sending up Attagirls, big deal. But when we use a testimonial to really understand and respond to the concerns or questions that the person reading it might have, then there's suddenly a lot more power, because we don't have to make claims in our marketing copy. We can let the testimonial speak for us. Now it's somebody else's voice, and somebody is saying, you know, I was really nervous about social media. I didn't understand it. It was overwhelming. I wasn't really sure if Sherry was going to tell me what I needed to know, but when I talked to her, it was great because she made it all really clear and very simple to me. That's a lot more powerful than Sherry is great.
Yeah, you're right. And it also speaks to the importance of addressing pain points. Nobody can tell you what their pain points are other than your customer. So,
right.
Yeah, and now that you're talking about it, actually I'm thinking about it, because we're always looking for the pain points of our customers to address it. And we can get them to tell us those pain points and how we solved it.
Exactly, exactly. And so when the way that I recommend doing a testimonial or getting a testimonial is to actually interview the client. Because another thing that often happens is that, you know, let's say we finished up working together and I come to you, let's say you were my client, and I come to you and I say, Sherry, would you mind writing me a testimonial? And oftentimes people don't know what to say. They feel really awkward. They're afraid they're not going to say the right thing. They may think that they're not a good writer. And so sometimes what happens is that they'll come back and they'll say, well, could you write it for me? And there's a number of reasons why that's not a good idea. I mean, it isn't quite honest for one thing, but even setting that aside, there is this question of you don't know. We can never know what our client's experience is.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they provide the material, you'll learn things about your work that you never knew that can be useful in having future marketing conversations, and writing your website and so on. So to take the burden off them, because after all, they're doing you a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
we're all busy. Having to write a testimonial for somebody, no matter how much you read their work, can be really like one more thing to do. So when you can talk to them, say, you know what, can we just have a 15 or 20-minute conversation? And I'll ask you a few questions. You'll tell me what your experience was. I'll take your words and write it up for you, send it back to you. You can edit it, make it look however works for you. Mm-hmm. And then you get what you need. It's strategic, it's focused, it specifically addresses, like you said, the pain points and what you did to solve them. And they don't have to go through the hassle. People don't necessarily know what makes a good effective testimonial. And so to expect them to be able to write it is a little unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. That is so right. And I think they are going to love you for it. Because, if they are happy, they do want to give you a good review. But sometimes you're just so busy and it becomes a chore. But if it comes down to just answering a few questions, that makes it a lot easier. Now, speaking of those interview questions, as I mentioned, there is a link to the interview questions that Grace shared with us at that workshop that I sat in. And if you open the Showcase app, on the right-hand side, there is a link. It's called Interview Questions. It's the second link that you will see when you view the Showcase app. So make sure to download it and use it. Fantastic. Okay. So let's see. How should we ask for a testimonial? How should we approach?
I think one of the most important things, because it is, I teach this and I still sort of go, I got to ask for the testimonial now. So I think it's really important to make it part of just what you naturally do, part of your business systems, so that it becomes just something that you do when you have a successful engagement. You can ask. People often think they should only ask at the end of a project, or when you wrap up with a client, but that's not necessarily so. If they send an email saying, wow, I got X result out of this is really great, that's a great time to say, hey, you know what, I'd really love to use that as a testimonial. Can we have a conversation and maybe make it a little bit more than that? Obviously, when you wrap up is a good time. Anytime you hit a particularly important milestone, so if you're doing a project with somebody and it has phases, or if they've achieved something, and this applies to any line of business. You could be doing services, you could be doing products. Mm-hmm. Any form of business can benefit from having some specific places in their process to ask, as well as always making sure that when the opportunity comes up, whenever anybody says something nice, you jump on that and take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. What I was saying earlier about making sure that people recognize, we're just going to have a quick conversation. It's not difficult. Mm-hmm. Now, I do recommend that you make sure that you use the questions that are in, as you said, in the Showcase app, because those questions are specifically designed to get the information that you most want to draw from somebody. Mm-hmm. And also, record the conversation if at all possible, because that way you won't have to be madly scribbling notes, and you can actually listen to what they say, and you can make it into a conversation instead of just a string of questions. Mm-hmm. A lot of the free conference lines, you can pay like just a minimal fee if you're not already set up to do it, to record a conversation. You could even do, I know you love Hangouts. Yes. You can do Hangout.
Yeah, this Hangout is public, but you can do private Hangouts. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I just crossed my mind that if you do a workshop or something, sometimes it's difficult to ask individuals. But if you invite the people at the workshop to a hangout, maybe you can have sort of a meeting about, like, you can get a whole bunch of testimonials from a lot of people. Would that work?
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of doing it that way, but I think, I think that certainly is something that would work. It could be really interesting to get people to riff off each other and talking about what they liked. The only potential drawback there is that some people might be shy about sharing in a group.
Yeah.
But that's, you know your audience. If that works for your audience, go for it.
Do you think that there has to be a one-on-one conversation, or can it just be a survey? Are surveys too cold?
I think surveys put people back into that difficult position of having to write. And I think you'll get, here's the thing, if you've done in-depth work with somebody, having the conversation is priceless. If it's like you said, a workshop or something where it was maybe you just got a relatively small product that somebody has bought, doing a survey might be a better answer because it is less invasive. And so I think you have to gauge how you collect the information to the scope of what your work with the client was. Does that make sense?
And I think I kind of like, conversations better because you can send a survey and they can answer it, but then you might want to ask more questions about something what they said. And sometimes you ask them to rate you, and out of 5, they give you a 3 or a 4, and you want to make sure, okay, how can I make that into a 5, right? And they don't always tell you the basis of giving you a middle rating.
Yeah, well, I would not ever, frankly, use a survey that's got any kind of numerical ratings. I would pick and choose. The interview questions that I provided, there are only 7 or 8 of them. And I say 7 or 8 because one of them is an optional question. You will find in the conversation that it really does develop into a conversation. I do testimonial interviews like this for my clients when I'm actually developing. Sometimes I will take on a content development project. Typically what I do is I help people write their own content. But when somebody really doesn't want to do that and they want somebody to write their website for them, I will do client interviews because it's part of the process that I use in learning about somebody so that I can be more effective in describing their work. And oftentimes people are reluctant to have that conversation, but then when they get into it, it's fun. It's just like it's hanging out. And just having, and because I'm very, very careful to make sure that it really is just 20 minutes. That's, even for a busy person, they can give you 20 minutes.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. I'm thinking of, because as I was listening to you, I thought about a question to ask, but I forgot it.
Right. Yeah.
But that brings me. Okay. I remember what I was going to ask. So this question that you asked before, not only is good for testimonial, it's also great for the about page.
Oh yes, absolutely. Because, like I think I said earlier, you will learn things about your work that you never knew. You will learn benefits and results that people are getting, and facts about their experience, their emotional experience, as well as the actual concrete experience that you never knew. Because, like I said, you can never be in the position of being your client. You can never experience that. You can experience similar work from someone else, but you can never know what it's like to be your own client.
Yeah.
And to have that feedback, particularly the emotional feedback, because when I did that workshop, you may remember one of the people there said that she had gone to my website and looked at the testimonials, and she was like, they're really emotional. I was like, yes, that's what you want, because we make decisions emotionally first.
Yeah.
So to create that emotional connection with the person reading your website or listening to a testimonial, if you happen to do it on video or, which is a whole nother topic that we won't go into, but really is important, because then they get that sense of, oh, this person understands me. They understand my problems. And that's so important, because until somebody gets that feeling of being understood, they can't even hear that you have a solution for them, because we all like to think our problems are unique.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have to help someone understand, and testimonials are a great way to do this, that you really do get what they're going through. You get the problem, you get the difficulty of it, you get the struggle.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So that's your secret, because I remember as you were talking about, it reminded me of the question that was asked during the workshop. Your testimonials are so emotional. So that's because you talk to them instead of, just asking them for a review.
Right, right, exactly. And that's when you draw out that emotional language.
Yeah. There are places where you really can't post it yourself, so you can write it. So you're going to have to, for example, leaving Google reviews or Yelp reviews and things like that, or reviews on Facebook pages. How do you suggest you go about doing it?
I think that if you're asking somebody to do that, or on a LinkedIn testimonial or something like that, the key is to give them the real secret of a testimonial, which I've touched on. I should say the real secret of a good testimonial, which I've touched on a couple of times, but I don't think I've really stated explicitly. And that is that a testimonial is best used to answer a concern or a question that the reader might have, or that somebody, a potential client, might have, in a way that responds to them directly without your being over there going, marketing, 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 marketing.
Yeah.
Because if I say to you, I create a safe space, that's a marketing claim. If I say to you, you can talk to me about how you struggle with writing your own website, or how, whatever, how you write a sales page and you hear nothing but crickets back when you put it out there. I can say that, and you know me, so you might believe me, but somebody who doesn't know me is going to say, well, yeah, sure, she can say that, but how do I know it's true? But if I have a testimonial that comes in and says, I was really worried, I feel ashamed about the fact that I write these sales pages for programs that I think are great, but nobody responds. But Grace really was able to make me feel comfortable in understanding that that's not an unusual thing, that there are things that can be done to fix that. Mm-hmm. That's much more powerful. So if you can say to somebody, if you can just briefly state a concern or a question you had up front, and then tell them how I answered that. I've given you sort of a long-winded answer to your question here, but
that's okay.
The point is important. So what was a concern, and how did I answer that? That right there, even if they're a terrible writer, will go a long way to being really solid and credible. Okay. And the important thing is, too, it doesn't matter if they're a terrible writer, because then you've got something that's in their voice. Mm-hmm. It's clearly not how you would say it. People get that on an energetic level, and it's not how you would have put it. So they know you're not writing your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess one way to do it is to give the questions that you have if they don't want to sit down with an interview, or they're going to Yelp to write their own.
Yeah, but give just a few of the questions, not the whole list, because the whole list can be a little overwhelming.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I also don't recommend, people will often say, hey, can I have the questions ahead of time? And I'm like, you know what, we're just going to have a conversation. I've got a few questions. Let's just sort of let it evolve naturally. So I try not to give the questions ahead of time.
Okay. That's a good
But if you just do a couple of the questions, the most important one is, what was a concern you had and how did I answer it?
That's fantastic.
And often people will say, well, I really didn't have one. But if you dig a little, you'll find that they did.
Yeah.
Because we all do. We've all got questions when we go into working with somebody.
Uh-huh. What do you mean?
Is this going to work?
I just think everybody should try it. I went ahead and used your suggestion. I didn't use all of your questions, but instead of asking people to write testimonials, to answer questions. And I did have that numerical scale, but I think I'm going to have to modify it and remove it.
Yeah. As you say, different people, it's like for me, when I'm asked to rate something on a numeric scale, I will almost never give the top rating. And that probably comes out of my corporate management background, where we never give anybody the top rating unless they truly walked on water. Uh-huh. that's really a little bit unfair because often I'm rating people who did a really good job. Mm-hmm. But somebody else who's just super nice, much nicer than I am, would give that top rating. And so there's never really an even, it's never a level playing field, to use it.
I see. Yeah. Okay, so I think you touched on this. What if someone asks us to write the testimonial for them?
That's where this interview process really comes in handy. It's like, you don't even say, hey, would you write me a testimonial? You say, hey, can we talk for 15 or 20 minutes so that I can understand what about my work you really liked so that I can help create a testimonial that you don't have to write. That was sort of a clumsy way of saying it, but you get my point. So oftentimes people will say, well, can't you just write it? And if they really insist on that, then you can say, you know what? The challenge there is that I'll write it from my perspective, and what I'm really interested in is your experience, because you know your experience, I don't, I can see what results we got together, but there are things that you would consider important that I might not even know about. Mm-hmm. So it's really important for us to have this conversation, and you find 15 or 20 minutes just for a quick conversation. If they can't, then you have to make a choice. Is this somebody you want to get a testimonial from or not?
Yeah.
You don't have to get a testimonial from every single client.
Yeah, that's right. Funny, once I shared a web page to a Facebook group, which I am no longer in because I left. But when I shared that website to get feedback from the members, they were all skeptical and very cynical about the fact that why is this person showing so many testimonials? What's wrong with showing a lot of testimonials?
Nothing. The world is basically divided into two parts, and one part of the world believes testimonials and finds them very valuable. Another part of the world finds them questionable. You can't please all the people all the time. The more powerful your testimonials are, the more likely you are to win over the skeptics. Mm-hmm. I think if anybody has been in business for any length of time, if they don't have a reasonable number of testimonials, I start to see question marks. Maybe they've just not bothered to get them, which is certainly true for a lot of people. Nothing's wrong with having a lot of them, but I do think that it's important to weed them out sometimes because our work evolves. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's a point I want to make, which is that when you think about who you want to ask somebody who challenges you. Not in a bad way. This is an ideal client, but it's like your leading edge ideal client, so that it's somebody who is ideal for the work you want to be doing tomorrow, next year, not necessarily in the past. So ask the people that are pushing your work forward, and make sure that you look at past testimonials on your site to take out the ones that may not reflect the work you're doing now, because they'll start to feel dated. And I think that's really important. The other thing too, for credibility purposes, is to always make sure that you get, as much as possible, full name, a professional title of some sort, a website if they have a website, and a photo, and a geographic location. Mm-hmm. All of those things add credibility because it's like, they're not just you ghostwriting things, they're real because they've got someplace else to go and look. And
that's a great point. Yeah. That's fantastic. That's a fantastic point. What if somebody's doing a number of different things? For example, I help people with social media strategy, but I also teach. So I got testimonials from people that take my workshops, but I also have testimonials from people that work with me. How would you display that on your website? Do you have 2 tracks or something?
Well, do you have 2 sets of pages? Do you have pages that address your teaching versus pages that address your client work?
No.
Okay. Potentially. It depends on whether how much you want your website to focus on the clients versus on the teaching. Now, you're teaching social media strategy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that you could do is make sure that the testimonials you get from students address your expertise in social media.
Uh-huh.
And for me, speaking as somebody who could potentially be looking for somebody to help, a coach to help me with social media, knowing that you teach and that your students are reviewing you well is a big plus. Mm-hmm. So it's not enough to just get a good testimonial. You have to place it strategically as well. I mean, I'm all about strategy. So again, we're looking for testimonials that are answering questions. So in the case of the student testimonial, Sherry was really patient, really good at teaching me how to do that, blah, 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 whatever. So that would address a concern that somebody might have. I'm a newbie in social media. I'm afraid of looking like a fool. Is Sherry going to make me feel stupid? Well, here I see this testimonial from a student that says, oh, Sherry was really patient. She helped me understand this. Cool. She's not going to make me feel stupid. Mm-hmm. And you can place that in your website as a call out, as a block quote or however, whatever your preferred technical term is, in a place where that question or that concern might come up. Mm-hmm. It goes back to what I was saying before about making sure that you answer questions and concerns using the testimonials, but then you also want to place them at a spot in your content where that question would naturally arise.
Yes, that's fantastic, which brings us, first of all, I want to say Michelle Price is watching, and she's saying great information being provided. So
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, Michelle, and for your nice comment. So then we go back. This brings us to the next question. Where would you put it on? Does it matter where the testimonials are placed on the website?
Right, and that's really key. It absolutely matters. Which is what I was just talking about, is to make sure that you're answering questions. And I think it is super important, and something that I work with clients over and over and over again is, how do you put yourself into your audience's shoes? Not just into their shoes, but into their skin, so you really get what their experience is. If that's something, and it's really difficult for us as the business owner to do, because we know what we're doing, we know our process, we know. So if you have somebody who is both a friend or a colleague and a potential client, or could be a potential client, to have help from somebody like that, what questions come up when you read my website? And then you put the testimonial that answers that in there. I'm just going to make a really important point about getting feedback in general, which is that I got blindsided by this a few times, rather painfully, before I learned it. If you ask for feedback from somebody, no matter how much they may want to help, and they're not either in your ideal client pool or somebody who is empathically able to put themselves into that situation, you will get bad feedback.
Oh.
Because they won't get it. And you will potentially get your feet cut out from underneath you in ways you don't need to be. It can be, I got blindsided by that a few times until I became aware, wait a minute, they're no way a client. They couldn't be a client. They're a great friend. They mean well. But what they just told me has no relevance to what my client's experience is.
Yeah.
So when you ask somebody what questions come up, don't just throw it out there to, your Facebook feed. Make sure you're asking specific people, maybe a past client who you stayed in touch with. Where do the questions come up? What questions would you like answered to? And you plug your testimonials in there. Sorry, that was a very long answer to a short question.
It's a long answer, but it's a fantastic answer, and something that people tend to forget a lot of times about relevance. In being hurried to get things done, strategy and relevance goes out the door. And then people get frustrated why it isn't working.
Yep. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. That's the challenge people have all the time, and that's why I'm always asking people to slow down, think about what you're doing. Don't just jump immediately to how you're going to do it. Think about what it is you want that end result to look like first.
That's fantastic. Well, I just love what you just shared today. I've learned a lot in your workshop, but now I learned even more, which is fantastic.
Good.
And I just want to encourage you to activate the Showcase app and hover over the links. Check out Grace's website and also download that document that she is providing for us generously, free of charge. And then in the closing, I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do, how you help business owners, and so on and so forth.
I would love to. Thank you. And I think one of the things you'll see in that document as well is a link to a series of 3 blog posts that I wrote about gathering testimonials. So there's some more. It probably covers most of what we've said, but there's some more stuff there in written format. Really, I spend a lot of time working with clients doing content development for websites, writing the content for them. But what I have seen over and over again is that when somebody writes when they find their own words, and many, many, many entrepreneurs want to write their own websites. They know they need design because they're not designers. They know they need the technical implementation because they're not technical people. But they want to write their own website content. The words they want to come from them because it's their business and it feels very important to have that sense of ownership there. Mm-hmm. But they don't always know the best way to do it. And I mean, I do this for people. I help people find their words, but I had to have help to find my own. We cannot get, my coach made the point that we're inside the jam jar looking at the back side of a label. Our clients are looking at the front of the label, and they need it to make sense from their, it's what you were talking about, relevance and having that sense of perspective. And so when I work with somebody now, it's to help them find their own words, because the confidence and the certainty that comes when somebody knows that, wow, these are my words, and I have them, I really do have them. I know what I'm talking about with my work, and I can have that clarity. It's huge. And then the cash flow follows.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so much fun.
I love it. Yeah, and creating content is such a challenge, especially when it comes to your website, because that's basically people's first impression of you.
Right, right.
So be strategic about it, and also to have it represented in your own voice is really important. That's something that I teach during my class. One big topic that we cover is your voice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
and I feel people, when they do ghostwriting for somebody else, sometimes you can tell,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, my clients, when I was doing copywriting for content development for websites, they would say, you really captured my voice. This sounds like me, which is great, but it's not the same as producing it yourself. And what I tell people is, you may not think you have the words, but I know you do. I promise you that you do. And I can help you find them. I'm actually running a Write Your Own Sales Page group program starting early October. So if you go to my website, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a 4-week program, and I guarantee that people will have a viable sales page at the end of it.
Is it a Facebook page, or where is it?
It's on my website. Under the Services tab, you'll find Write Your Own Sales Page, and it's going to be, the group will be partly on Facebook, but there will also be teleclasses, not Google Hangouts, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But teleclasses and really a lot of one-on-one, hands-on help to create the sales page so that you really have something that you're proud of and that is going to be effective at the end of it.
That's fantastic. So is it, in case people can't come on October, are you going to offer it again in the future?
Probably. This is the first version of it, so it's got a beta price on it. It's got the introductory price, and so I do encourage people to, if they can attend this one, it would be great. But I will probably do it again. I'm actually looking at doing a full end-to-end Write Your Own website starting the beginning of the year.
Nice.
I also help people with their about pages, so yeah.
Nice.
The about page is one that people really get stuck on.
Yes, I know. Well, Michelle again is saying she's learning a lot from this HOA, and I'm so glad, Michelle, because that's our purpose here at OpenSM. I want to really thank you, Grace, for giving us your time. I've learned so much from you, and I'm so glad that I got to know you through Hera Hub. Many of you may not know, but Grace and I co-work, right? They sort of use a co-working space for women entrepreneurs called Hera Hub, and I've met lots of amazing women there. So, and I encourage you to connect with Grace, follow her. She's got a lot of fantastic things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So it wraps up our today's show, and as you know, if you're a regular Open SMR, I used to do these shows once a week, but then now I've decided to scale back, and really I will have shows whenever I run into something really wonderful, and I think the world shouldn't be kept a secret, and Grace's workshops was one of them. So until I find the next gem, I want to say goodbye, but please, I know that once you finish but if you got this far, you know how wonderful this information was. So I really want to encourage you to share it with your network so they can take advantage of all this fantastic stuff that was shared. So until next time, goodbye.